My name's Don.
And I'm Peter.
And we are two plebs talking about... California.
Yes. This week in DPRC.
Sure enough. Because if we were ever to, in any realistic way, come out of the complete madness, we would lose an entire week's worth of show.
We would.
I'm not really worried about it.
So far California has been really consistent with bringing us something.
Yeah, no, they're really good. And this week, once again, they've given us at least two.
Yep. Yes, they have.
I only say at least because I found one of these almost as soon as we closed out last week's show.
Right. As soon as we were done, we went looking, I'm like, well, shit.
Right. Which is to say that almost immediately after I uploaded last week's show, I clicked over to the news feeds because I'm a junkie like that. And right up there at the top was California is attempting to impose mass rent control.
Yep.
Now, I'm pretty sure we've covered why rent control is a bad idea like a million times at this point.
Yes, we've talked about it a few times.
So maybe we'll forego the in-depth discussion here, but no less. When you really get into it, it's not so much that they're necessarily arguing for statewide rent control right at the moment. It's that in the, 70s or 80s or something, we imposed a law that went, you can't do widespread rent control because it causes lots of problems. And we did that after San Francisco had imposed widespread rent control and then tried to impose it on the rest of the state. And they got a little bit of traction and everything went to hell and we went, oh, let's never do this again.
Right.
So we wrote a law that said we can't.
Right.
So sure enough, here we are a generation later and it's, but rents are so expensive in California. And if we just told those greedy old landlords that they weren't allowed to charge that much money, everything would be fine.
Right. I tell you one thing, rent prices might come down if property taxes came down.
Well, so around here, property taxes aren't that big of a deal. All things considered, in a lot of ways, we have a pretty decent property tax rate, specifically because it's California. Mm-hmm. And it was actually one of the things that I got warned with about 50 times when I said I was planning on moving to Texas is like, well, you got to understand that Texas doesn't have the property tax cap that California does, so the property taxes out there are just outrageous.
They
and
are?
I was like, okay. So I went and I looked at the place that I'm looking at going. And around here, your property taxes are supposed to cap at 1%, but they really cap somewhere like 1 1/3 or something like that.
Right. Through
various California-ings. But I went and looked there, and it was like 1.45. And I was like, so...
outrageous.
Right. Don't get me wrong, on hundreds of thousands of dollars, 0.1% makes a difference. It's, it'd be $1,000 a month pretty easily.
Right.
So, okay, yeah, relevant. But property prices down there are half of what they are here, so it's still less money.
Right.
But nonetheless, it's not that. It's all the other things we've ever talked about, right? You don't let people build, so the supply of houses doesn't go up, but the population does. All kinds of things actually very related to just that principle.
Right.
And so our property value is absurd. Mm-hmm. So big surprise that when you're sitting on a $400,000 house that you have to pay about $7,000 a year just in taxes, just in property taxes, right? You're charging people pretty reasonable in the vicinity of $2,000 a month to live there, right? Because you also have to maintain the house, right? Pay the taxes on what you collect in rent,
right?
There's a reality that it does cost people in California a decent amount of money just to be able to rent you a house. Nobody wants to hear that, though.
No.
Right? So,
they're all slumlords.
Exactly. I love that. Everyone who's ever rented, but my rent went up like $200 this time when I signed a lease because my landlord's a greedy bitch. Yeah, it could be that. Or it could be that the wide variety of other things involved in what your rent costs changed. I don't know.
Chances are.
Maybe it's just me.
They usually don't just hike up your rent for no good reason.
Right. And by the way, this other things that will happen that I'm sure will definitely not absolutely cause this to just collapse the state housing economy. So when rent is low, no one buys houses.
Right.
Right? Because it's cheaper to rent.
Yes.
So it becomes a buyer's market. Right? So this just sort of makes the market go up and down and sort of stabilize around a center balance point, right? Because, well, rent is low, no one buys houses, therefore lots of people buy houses, therefore rents go back up.
Right.
Right. And it basically, quick and dirty, right? Well, so when you forcibly keep rents low, you're going to invariably have to cut property value to make it worthwhile for people to buy houses. So hypothetically, this lowers the cost of all the housing in the area. Except they're still not going to increase the quantity of houses in the area.
Nope.
They're still going to hold down the number we can build ridiculously every single year. So, as opposed to property prices going down, there will be a brief time where property prices come down, and they'll go straight through the roof, right?
Yep.
Because now it will become an enforced class system. You can afford to buy a house, or you can't.
Yep.
And that's what they're going to get. And then they'll do the same thing they always do, which is to say that, but you've created these class differences, and so the 1%, and they're just the 0.1%, they have all the homes. Because, burning.
Right. So at that point in time, burning, so what we need to do is take them away from them and give them to the people who need them.
Right, which, by the way, is actually already happening. Jeremy Corbyn is saying to do this in England, right? So,
of course.
Big surprise that this seems like something they would do, because it's literally already happening from our British socialist friends. So, but on top of that, by the way, the other thing that will guaranteeably happen is we will create slumlords and make people who abandon properties.
Right, because look at the place that has a lot of rent control.
Right.
Good old New York.
Yeah, and you've still got that kind of problem there, right?
And if people want an idea of what it's like living around there, but with a comedic twist, go watch Joe's Apartment.
Right. So, and why is that? Because, well, I can't charge money for this, and I'm not going to pay for,
anything.
Pretty much. Anything that I can avoid paying for, I'm just not going to pay for. And California has boatloads of laws about what renters have to do, right? Or what homeowners who rent have to do.
Yep.
And so they have to take care of the house up to a certain standard. And this is the kind of thing that, when imposed in New York, got people to abandon properties left and right.
Yep.
Which, by the way, decreases the quantity of available housing, thus increases housing prices, and just on it goes, because this is one of the worst policies that has ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, despite that we know this thousands of times over throughout history.
Yep.
That it never works out right, we're going to do it again.
Of course we are.
Because no one is looking out for the little guy. I'm not even kidding, it's in the article.
I believe you.
Right? So, the problem here is not that California is this massive regulatory burden that is destroying everything in it. The problem is that landlords who have to put up with that massive regulatory burden are greedy.
Yes.
As though anyone who rents someone else a house is a billionaire.
Right. I'm only doing this to make more money. I'm already, rolling in caviar in my bath or whatever.
Right.
It couldn't be because I would like this to be my method of making a living.
Well, and that makes you rich, if you would like that to be your method of making a living, right? Despite that, we know factually that this was a way that the lower middle class became upper middle class in this country for about 100 years, right? They would buy a house, they would move in, they would pay it off if they had bought it on credit, and then they would buy another house and rent out their original one.
Yep.
And
to pay for the new one.
Right. And like handymen who are not exactly rolling in the dough, this is exactly how they made their money for about 100 years in this country, right? Because they would go and I already own this one, so I'm going to go rent this one that is just garbage, and I'm going to fix it while I'm living there. and rent out this one that I have fixed up previously. And this is where we got all of this house flipping thing, right? Because some guy who was good with a hammer and a wrench could do this forever in this country.
Yeah.
But we have now taken that away, right? Because that guy now needs a lawyer.
Yep.
So, there's that.
Right. That you have to maintain the house to X amount of standard. You have to have X amount of money just sitting in a bank account in case something goes wrong. You have to have the insurances.
Right.
You have to have a lot of money sitting off to the side to be able to rent out a property.
Yeah, exactly. And somehow or another, that's not a big deal.
Apparently not.
Right. Because we're crazy lefty socialist communist fuckfaces in this state.
Right. It's the state of where the government looks after all the little guys.
Right.
So the statement of, well, no one's looking out for the little guy is bullshit.
Yeah, well, and you run into all the problems you do with every other, government plan that has ever existed. So, you get all the citizens voting for rent control and all the property owners being like, please no, right?
Right.
But there's more people who rent houses than are renting houses. Yes. So this is effectively what happens economically in the tyranny of the majority.
Yeah.
And no one minds.
No one minds until, something happens. Because people are like, okay, I own like 5 or 6 properties I'm renting out. This new stuff, rent control comes in. It's now no longer going to be profitable because it has to be profitable for me to do this.
Sure.
All right, time to sell them.
Well, and then they all run into this problem where they can't, right?
Right.
So this is part of what drives property value down, is everyone who can't afford anymore to rent houses tries to sell them. That forces the property value down, right?
Right.
And then invariably, they will get picked up by someone eventually, right? But, shortly after that, all kinds of craziness will happen. But this happens every time rent control is imposed. You can go look at literally every single historical instance of rent control and you'll find it out. Yeah. But we're going to do it anyway.
Of course we are.
Because we have no concept of history, first of all.
Right. Which means as soon as it looks like this is getting ready to go down is when, my wife and I need to sell our house. Because we get a rental, wait about 6 months after the law is taken effect, and the property values will have plummeted down to nothing, and we can buy a better house for less
probably
money.
Buy the same house right back for 25% of the price.
Right.
Just, you better do it quick, because while that will, and by the way, that will destroy half the state's economy.
Oh,
right?
It will.
When all of the property values immediately plummet and then go back up real quick, this place is going to hell. But
that happened not too long ago.
Yeah, weird. On the subject of this place going to hell, in the future.
Right.
It is also relevant to say that I believe the Washington Post put out an article
on California
this week on California talking about how if you thought we were crazy, leftist, progressive, communist douchebags now, just wait till the next election.
Because apparently Moonbeam Brown is out.
Yeah, he said he's going to retire, and we share a friend that went, but there are Republicans who are running for governor, and
this is California.
Yeah, I just straight up laughed.
Like you have to understand where you live,
right? I could run for governor. No one in this state is voting for me, right? No. I will get 4 votes. At 2 best. Of them are in this room, right? So, it's not exactly high on the hopes. Then, and by the way, I am fairly distant from the Republican Party in what progressives would enjoy in various freedom ideas. Right? Never going to happen.
No.
So and who do we have lined up? Who is already by polls? Is already getting all the love of the media? Who is likely to be our next governor? Do you know?
No.
Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom.
You know who that is?
No, I don't.
Former mayor of San Francisco.
Oh.
So, take a wild guess the direction the politics are going.
So the mayor of the toilet.
Right. Soon we can have a statewide poop app.
Okay, it goes back to the poop app.
That's amazing. So, And right along with that, by the way, there are a bunch of
basically there's a plethora of Democrats all going like me. Yes, I saw that part.
Yeah. Well, so there's like, this is turning into the prior election, the presidential election.
Right.
There's like 4,000 people running for governor here.
And apparently every single one of them are further left than Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Every single one of them.
Right. And, like, by the way, understand that if you get a Republican elected to any office here in California, they're not really Republicans, right? They're like the same way that Europe has, or, well, specifically Britain has a right wing, which is to say that, the whole window of politics, if this is the center, the whole thing is, well, I guess for viewers' sake, way over here off to the left, right? And so then you have a right wing of that.
Right.
And so, again, the center's over here, so maybe your right wing gets back to the center. Maybe. So, but I don't think so. No. Right? And the reality is, the deal with the whole, like, politics is moving, all of the left needs to go way, way left, that's all coming from California.
Yes, it is.
So, can you imagine what our next crazy communist governor is going to be doing? Like, probably literally advocating for communism.
Probably.
So, But it's not even just that, right? Because there's a bunch of seats all over the state that are up for re-election. Mm-hmm. And so all kinds of people are like, hey, maybe we could stop the crazy progressive madness. And then you go look at the list of candidates for each of the seats. And what is it? It is, I am the most crazy progressive person about every single thing.
Yep.
On every single topic. I take the most progressive, communist, far left madness kind of discussion that I can. And, ideas like fiscal responsibility or, private property rights or, God forbid you get anywhere near the Second Amendment. No. No. We don't do that here. Right? So, the whole state is about to take one massive step to the left again.
Yes.
And
yes, it is.
Everything over the next 10 years, I'm pretty sure it's going to go buck wild. Because socialized medicine?
Oh, right? Yeah.
Do we remember how that got gotten rid of?
You didn't provide us an accurate budget yet. That's why we didn't bother voting on it.
And who said it?
Who?
Brown.
Yeah.
Of all people, Brown said it first. So we can't pay for this. And I know that because you haven't told me how we're going to pay for this.
Right.
And do you know what every single person along the line who was publicly speaking at the time said?
What?
Who cares how we're going to pay for this? So socialized medicine, coming to California.
Oh, yeah, it's coming.
On top of that, by the way, this is that rent control discussions, all these like proposed bills that we talk about of
They're
like
happening.
California wants all of these crazy things. They just don't think they can get it. Well, as soon as we vote out all of our state senate and, our assemblymen and all those kinds of things, straight from the bottom all the way up to Governor Gavin crazy as fuck socialist Newsom will be, yes, Stalin did nothing wrong.
Right.
So, good luck to you, California. There's a reason I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So,
there's serious discussion in this plebs house about getting out of this state.
You probably should eject California. If you watch this show and you're in California, eject. Just do it now.
Yeah, which is why like the new California declaring independence stuff was like,
oh please,
please do.
Right? Well, it's not going to happen. Let me tell you that right now.
Almost.
California will likely remove the inseparable part of the Union from its own state constitution, and then it will look down upon the plebeian right-wing 2/3 geographically of the state and go, you're too stupid to govern yourselves, and that's why we must govern you. As though that's not raw hypocrisy.
That is raw hypocrisy. Like, we don't agree with goddamn thing one you guys are putting through legally, so we want to be our own state. Well, you're too stupid to know what you want.
Right. Well, but aren't you trying to leave the Union over the same thing? Well, shut up.
Right.
But, hey, none of that is going to change that the entire state will then move more crazy to the left can you imagine what's going to happen if Trump gets reelected? Can you imagine how nutty lefty this is going to go?
I don't even want to imagine.
Right? Because just the impetus of Trump being elected, and let's not kid ourselves here, we were making the slow walk to the left as time went on.
Right.
But this is going to be a big jump.
Well, I mean, you're right. It is. I mean, basically, Trump getting elected has made everybody run as fast as they fucking can to the left.
Yeah. And what are we getting here? So can you imagine 2020? Trump's inaugurated again. If they're not actively advocating for communism by then, on January 21st, they will be.
Yeah. Yes, they will.
Probably more like November 10th.
I think Calexit will legitimately become a thing at that point in time.
Well, it's already sort of a thing. They're trying.
It's sort of a thing. They're kind of trying. I think they'll have much more support.
Oh, maybe.
If that happens.
But, and, you know, hey, they might have more support if that happens. However, I don't even think it's going to be that, right? It's going to be this states' rights argument thing for them to go, yeah, but we're communists now.
Right.
And look, you may think I'm exaggerating. Go listen to the party platform of these people. They're straight out, you know, the Bernie Sanders socialism. In fact, a lot of them say shit like Bernie Sanders does not go far enough.
Wow.
So, I mean, understand what's coming. And it's coming.
Yep. And
equally understand, by the way, that the way that this state works, think about all of that, you know, illegal immigrants are allowed to vote thing.
Yeah.
Right. Mexico does lots of socialist stuff.
Yes, they do.
And unsurprisingly, people come here from a government they've known all of their life. And if they come here en masse, they vote to change the new government to the things they liked about their old government.
Right.
So, that voting block's only going to increase.
Yep. It is. And if that keeps going through, what it'll end up happening is all the lefties will want to stay in California, and all of the other states that are already accustomed to white flight better get ready for a major influx.
And that's the end of our show for the day.
That's right. It's taco time.
However, before we go, we'd appreciate it if you shared us around.
You can find us on YouTube,
BitChute,
Facebook,
Twitter,
Patreon,
and Maker Support.
Thanks for stopping by.